The use of special envoys is something that's from the very beginning of our history. Before the United States had an established diplomatic corps, you'll remember John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and others were special envoys. And it's something that presidents and secretaries of state have used throughout our history. So it's nothing new, and people use it, leaders use it when they want to get everything focused on one or two very specific issues. Well, there's a couple of things involved. First, I think there's probably a number of special envoys that's too many. But at the moment, I think when you look around the world and you consider the Middle East, Afghanistan and Pakistan, Darfur, getting energy from Central Asia out into world markets, these are things that I actually think are well suited to the special envoy because they're able to focus attention on a specific problem, get resources, and mobilize the institutions, not just of the State Department, but all the institutions of government. Well, here, I mean, if you were President Obama and you looked out and you said, among the most important things that I have to do as president is get this Afghanistan-Pakistan thing right. And I think if you look over the last 8 years, one of the things that's been missing is somebody who's responsible on a day-to-day basis for bringing together the entire policy. And here I think in appointing Ambassador Holbrooke is a great opportunity. And he has taken on this relationship. He recognizes it's both Afghanistan and Pakistan, and because he is a mobilizer, he is starting to mobilize not just policy, but also the resources to try to deal with these questions.
What are some of the challenges that Holbrooke is facing in achieving some of those goals?
Well, obviously, I mean, we're speaking now, some days after there was an election in Afghanistan, and it didn't bring a clear outcome, and there's a lot of debate about, who is really legitimate in Afghanistan. That's a huge problem. The fact that the Taliban is resurgent, Al-Qaeda is still operating in Afghanistan, and I think increasingly people are recognizing that the problems in Afghanistan will never be solved until Pakistan also takes on some of its challenges of education and poverty and the requirement for it to play a positive role around the world. Well, that's a fair point, actually, on Darfur. I think part of the issue here, of course, is that you can have a special envoy, and maybe they're most effective when the vast majority of the responsibility belongs to the United States of America, which is not true in Darfur. You have to work with so many other people. And so I think you'll see an increasing amount of traction for our diplomacy on Darfur because of the special envoy and because there's still so much interest in the United States in this question. And part of the tragedy of Darfur, I think, over the last year or so, is given the economic crisis, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, and you name it, it's kind of moved down on the agenda. But I think that special envoy and Mrs. Clinton and others, her recent trip to Africa, will keep focused on these issues. The same really with the Middle East and also, as I say, with the questions of Caspian energy. Well, he's obviously facing the challenges of trying to bring to an end a generations-old conflict. But I was just so moved on the day that he was appointed. I thought of all the people in the United States who might be able to really do this job is George Mitchell. And why is that? Because look at the history. I mean, if you'd have said to me 20 years ago that George Mitchell was going to make this huge progress on Northern Ireland, of all places, I think most people would have said, not a chance. And I think a really important thing that Mitchell said on the day he was appointed, people start conflicts, people can end them. And if that's your philosophy, and I think there's a possibility here of doing something important. I have no idea whether there's going to be these negotiations anytime soon. I hope so. But the fact that the United States of America is represented in this issue by George Mitchell, I think is A, wonderful, and B, to be fair, an absolutely perfect example of why special envoys might be, in some circumstances, exactly the right policy move. Well, I think, again, there is to raise the profile of the issue, which is to create an east-west energy corridor to bring oil and gas out of the Caspian Basin and onto world markets. And the United States played a huge role in this in the 1990s and the early 2000s in the creation of the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, which runs from Azerbaijan through Georgia into Turkey. And the issue now is how to get more natural gas out of that area in a way that it can't be monopolized by one country or one company like Russia or Gazprom. And so Europeans, who are very dependent upon Russian natural gas, ought to be looking for diversity of supply. And one of the great ways to do that would be to bring more natural gas out of the Caspian through Turkey and onto world markets. And at the moment, there's a big international debate going on about a pipeline called Nabucco, which on the 13th of July, a lot of governments got together in Turkey and signed an agreement saying, let's go forward. And the fact that we have, as the United States, a special envoy, Richard Morningstar, Ambassador Morningstar, who will bring focus to the attention of trying to build Nabucco and also the creation of this east-west energy corridor is a very important thing. The United States showed the possibilities in the creation of Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan. People said it would never be built, and in fact it is built and exports oil from Azerbaijan out to world markets. And the same, I think, will be true someday of a natural gas pipeline, Nabucco or under some other name. Well, I think in all these instances, it's clear to me that President Obama and Secretary Clinton are absolutely on the same page. Again, you may consider it more symbolism, but I consider it important. Where did President Obama announce the appointment of Senator Mitchell and Ambassador Holbrooke? At the State Department, not at the White House, at the State Department. And I think this was a way for him to say to our diplomats and to the institution that working together, supporting the special envoys, will be a way to increase the influence of our diplomacy and increase the influence of our State Department. And that's the big issue, I think, for the department and the people who work in it. You know, are you going to say, oh, well, these special envoys, they have to stay outside of our system, outside of our diplomacy, and we don't like them and hope they'll go away? Or will they say, gosh, you know, if we bring them in and they're successful, then American diplomacy rises up. And the institution of the State Department is more important because diplomacy is more important. So I hope people there will look at this as a large question and not a bureaucratic question and say, how do I support the president in recognizing that diplomacy is a national security tool of the United States? And if you believe in that, then special envoys for important things, limited number, absolutely the right thing. And I hope the institution of our diplomacy will get behind them.